Have you ever felt completely safe only for your reality to shatter in an instant? Our fishing trip was supposed to be perfect, until my friend started vanishing into thin air. What unimaginable terror could hide in such a peaceful place? Let's dive into this nightmare. It was supposed to be the perfect weekend getaway, a break from our hectic lives. Picture this: a tropical oasis with palm trees swaying gently in the breeze, the sun casting shimmering reflections across a glistening lake. The water was an emerald green, lapping peacefully at the shore as we dropped our gear. The air smelled sweet, a mix of salt and blooming flowers, almost intoxicating. There were 5 of us, old friends who had gone through thick and thin together, each one of us ready for some much-needed relaxation away from the grind. Laughter danced around us, filling the air like music as we set out on our fishing boats. We had a cooler packed with drinks and snacks. The vibe was light and cheerful, an ordinary outing that seemed blissfully routine. But even in that paradise, a wave of anxiety nudged at the edges of my mind like the distant thunder of a storm. Maybe it was just my nerves. After all, it had been a while since I'd gone fishing. Still, as I pushed the thought aside, I noticed the way the wind picked up slightly, rustling the trees in a way that felt off. "Relax, Paul," Mark called out with a playful grin, oblivious to my unease. I chuckled, attempting to shake it off. Yet, beneath the surface of all that tropical beauty, something unsettling tugged at me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Little did we know this relaxing weekend would twist into a chilling tale, one I would never forget. You know, everything started out so perfectly. The sun was setting over the crystal clear water, and we were laughing and joking around our little campsite. But as darkness began to settle in, something shifted. At first, it was just a few rustling leaves, which we dismissed as nothing more than the wind playing tricks on us. But then, I heard it. A sound that seemed to echo from deep within the woods. It was a low, haunting growl, almost rhythmic, like some unseen beast was breathing in the shadows. My heart skipped a beat, but of course I wasn't about to show my friends I was unnerved. "Probably just a raccoon or something," I laughed nervously, forcing a smile as I tossed another log into the fire. But the laughter around me felt hollow, and the shadows danced more ominously against the trees. Each snap of a twig seemed amplified in the thickening darkness, filling my chest with a creeping unease that I couldn't shake off. By then we were all tentatively looking into the woods, expecting to see something emerge. A deer, a rabbit, anything that would ground us in reality rather than the unsettling silence that pressed against our ears. But there was nothing, just that oppressive darkness humming with an energy that felt alive and watching. I tried to make a joke to lighten the mood, but it fell flat, swallowed by the night. As I stared into the black where the trees loomed, I couldn't help but feel we were not alone. The sense of dread grew heavier, settling deep in my stomach like a dark secret. What horror stories did those woods hold, just waiting to be unearthed? I can still remember the exact moment the air changed thick like molasses, when Mark decided to wander off into the woods for more firewood. It felt innocent at first, a simple task to keep our little campfire alive. As I watched him walk away, the laughter and stories we shared flitted into the background, and I thought nothing of it. But soon, silence fell over the camp, swallowing our voices in a shroud of unease. After what felt like an eternity, I glanced over at the tree line. "Where's Mark?" I snapped, my heart starting to race. The laughter faded, replaced by a creeping feeling in the pit of my stomach. My friends exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke up. "Maybe he just lost track of time," suggested Rachel, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to mask her own rising anxiety. But I had a nagging feeling that something sinister was already looming, something far darker than the shadows cast by our flickering firelight. We all stood frozen for a moment, hoping that Mark would reappear any second, bringing with him a wave of relief. But after 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, panic began to set in. I was the one who eventually took the initiative, leading the charge into the oppressive darkness, calling out his name, my voice wavering with each echo that bounced back. With every step I took, unseen branches clawed at my skin, as if the forest itself was trying to hold me back. Yet, there was no response. Just the ominous cracking of twigs beneath my feet, and the growing fear that gnawed at the edges of my mind. "Mark!" I yelled again, my voice barely rising above a whisper now, swallowed by the creeping shadows. I could feel my heart thudding heavily, drowning in confusion. How could he simply vanish after stepping away for a moment? What unknown dangers lurked in these woods, and had I been foolish enough to lead us all into something we could not escape? It felt like the world around us had flipped upside down. Mark was missing, and panic spread like wildfire among the group. We called out his name, our voices echoing back in the eerie stillness of the forest, swallowed whole by the darkness that clung to us. But it wasn't just the worry for Mark that gnawed at our insides. A chilling sensation crept through the trees, wrapping itself around us like a thick fog. Then it happened. Sarah, her face pale, stumbled back toward us. I heard something," she gasped, glancing nervously into the shadows. "Whispers. Something is out there." We all exchanged anxious glances. Just the thought of the supernatural was enough to send our hearts racing, but none of us were prepared for the dread that followed. "Don't be crazy, Sarah." I tried to reassure her, though my own voice trembled slightly, but she shook her head, eyes wide, scanning the tree line. "No, you don't understand. It's like they were calling to me," she said, trembling. I could see the fear etched on her face, mirrored in the eyes of our other friends. We were supposed to be having fun, but now that fun had twisted into a nightmare. And then, just like that, her expression shifted. It was as if she was being pulled into the shadows themselves. "Guys, I have to..." Her words were suddenly cut off as if something had snatched her away. I felt my blood run cold. She didn't just run away, she vanished into thin air. A bone-chilling silence fell over the group, thick and suffocating. I couldn't even scream. It felt as if the very essence of terror had seeped into our bones. We were left standing there, frozen in sheer terror, realizing that the whispers might not have been just in Sarah's head after all. What had started as a fishing trip had transformed into a sinister game, and we were unfortunately the players. The moment Sarah vanished, it felt like someone had flipped a switch. We were no longer a group of friends enjoying a fishing trip. We became a collection of terrified souls stranded in a haunting abyss. The jovial laughter had disappeared, replaced by a silence so thick you could almost slice it with a knife. I remember an icy breeze swirling around us, even though the air should have been warm from the sun. It chilled my bones, and I could feel it creeping up the back of my neck, a sensation that whispered something was watching us. Then it started. One by one, each of us began to experience some inexplicable phenomena. Mike was the first. He shivered uncontrollably, claiming that something was wrapping cold fingers around his throat. "It's just the wind," I told him, but as I said it, I could feel the temperature drop even further, as if the very air was conspiring against us. A flickering light from our equipment caught my eye, and I turned just in time to see a shadow dart past the trees. It moved quickly, an elongated figure that disappeared into the dark, with a grace that sent a wave of dread crashing over my stomach. Quinn swore he saw something too, a glimpse of a face framed by darkness. His eyes widened in horror as he pointed, but when I looked, there was nothing but an empty void staring back, as if the forest itself refused to reveal its secrets. The cameras began malfunctioning, flickering on and off like dying fireflies. My heart raced. Each failed snap of the shutter deepened our vulnerability. What were we facing? Each glitch felt like a warning, a signal that something sinister was creeping toward us, lurking in the suffocating dark, waiting for the right moment to strike. Our reality was slowly unraveling, and the long shadows around us loomed larger with every passing moment. I can still hear the tension in the air, thick and rancid like the swampy water around us. We were trapped, not just mentally, but physically, surrounded by a creeping dread that was almost palpable. Panic rose among us like steam from the rising sun, but it was too late. All the horror stories we had laughed off in the realm of urban legends were suddenly screaming into our reality. As I fumbled with my phone, I noticed something disturbing. The screen illuminated with nothing but static, and when I tried to dial for help, a hollow silence enveloped me. "Guys, what's happening? I can't get a signal." My voice cracked, but I wasn't the only one losing my grip. Shadows danced unpredictably in the dim light, mocking our frantic attempts to reach out beyond the chilling isolation. A sudden scream shattered the air, a sound tinged with horror. We turned, eyes wide, but it was too late. One of the guys had vanished, swallowed whole by the darkness. We searched frantically where he had been, calling his name over and over. our voices echoing against the stillness, but he didn't respond. The unseen terror lurking out there was picking us off one by one, and every muffled cry faded into an overwhelming silence. When we attempted to regroup, despair clawed at our throats. "We need to stick together," someone shouted, but how could we? In the chaos, confusion set in. I could see fear etched upon every face, and we were slipping, our reality shifting like the ripples in the water around us. Everyone was shouting, trying to formulate a plan, but panic drowned out reason. "Let's go back," another cried, desperation lacing his voice. But no one knew which direction to take, and every time we turned, it felt as if the forest itself conspired against us, leading us further into madness. What was supposed to be a day of fun had twisted into a nightmare, and the chilling thought that we might never leave this cursed place sank deep into my bones. I couldn't shake the growing dread as the sun dipped lower, casting eerie shadows over the lake. You know, there are moments when you wish you'd paid more attention to the local legends, those supernatural tales that seemed ridiculous at first. Think of spooky campfire stories meant to scare children into behaving. Well, we had been those children, dismissing the whispers about vengeful spirits and cursed lands that lay hidden in the quiet woods surrounding the water. As I sat there, heart racing, I could hear a faint rustle in the trees, brushing against my instincts. My mind raced back to our earlier banter around the campfire, where our laughter masked the chilling tales shared by the locals. "Did you hear about the fisherman who vanished without a trace?" Max had joked, brushing off the haunted look in the old man's eyes as he told the story. "They say he angered the spirits of the lake." We laughed then, but the mirth felt hollow now. Those stories weren't just tales to entertain. They were warnings, echoes of the past lining the shores. I remembered the legend about the island, the one shrouded in mist where no boat dared drift close. They said it was cursed, a restless resting place for souls who sought vengeance on an unsuspecting world. Panic clawed at my throat. Was that where my friends had vanished? Just then, a chilling breeze swept across the lake, and for a moment I thought I saw something lurking beneath the surface, an unearthly shimmer, a hint of the unknown. That's when the thought struck me harder than the evening chill. What if we weren't the only ones on this fishing trip? What if something had been watching us all along, ready to claim the lost souls of the unwary? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the serene lake transformed into something unnerving. Shadows stretched like fingers across the water, and the fading light seemed to whisper warnings that echoed the local legends I had brushed off as mere superstition. My friends and I huddled by the once comforting campfire, now just a flickering reminder of safety as the darkness enveloped us. An unsettling silence settled over our campsite, punctuated only by the crackling wood and the occasional rustle in the trees. But it wasn't the sounds of nature that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was the way the night seemed to close in around us, suffocating and watchful. I could see it in my friends' eyes too, the same mix of disbelief and growing dread. "Did you hear that?" one whispered. It was almost a plea. Our nervous laughter had quieted, replaced by an awareness that something was truly wrong. The others had already vanished, and with every crunch of twigs and rustle of leaves, our minds spiraled deeper into paranoia. I could swear I heard faint whispers mingling with the wind teasing just out of reach, nameless yet familiar. The three of us clung together, our shared fear a desperate lifeline, as we decided to keep vigil, determined to navigate this haunting blackness with whatever courage we could muster. "Stay close," I urged, my voice trembling. We moved deeper into the shadows of the trees, the flickering firelight casting grotesque shapes on the ground. Each noise, the snap of a branch, the whisper of rustling leaves, amplified our panic as a heavy sensation of being watched clawed at our consciousness. It was no longer just a fishing trip. It was a fight for survival against an unseen terror lurking in the darkness. I felt the temperature drop, a bone-chilling wave that swept over us, sending shivers crawling up my spine. My remaining two friends, Tess and Mark, were just as on edge, their eyes darting around in search of whatever horror lurked in the twilight shadows. The whispers, once just a faint echo, had now morphed into something maddening, almost urgent, wrapping around us like a suffocating blanket. Then it happened. One moment we were standing together, united against the encroaching darkness, and the next, Mark let out a blood-curdling scream. I turned just in time to see him jerk violently backward, as if some invisible hand had seized him, dragging him into the thickening darkness. I lunged for him, but it was futile. An unseen force held him tightly. "Mark!" I shouted, my voice raw with panic. but he was already pulled beyond my reach, his terrified gaze locking onto mine until it vanished into the night. I could barely process what had just happened when I felt a tug at my sleeve. It was Tess. "We have to go, Paul," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "But how do you flee when the very air feels alive with malice?" Panic surged through me, a frantic desperation to escape the real-life horror unfolding around us. I could feel eyes upon me, countless, malevolent eyes. I took a deep breath, grounding myself. "We find our way back to the truck," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. We began to move, hearts pounding in tandem with the whispers swirling in the air. Every crack of twigs beneath our feet sent jarring spikes of fear through me, and I fought against my instincts to turn back. But deep down I knew, whatever was out there, it wasn't finished with us yet. I stood there, heart pounding, every breath tasting like fear. Just moments ago, my friends had been at my side, laughing and sharing stories, but now they were gone. The oppressive darkness wrapped around me like a shroud, suffocating and sinister. As I stumbled through the trees, their laughter echoed in my mind, haunting and cruel, now replaced by the eerie silence. Then, out of nowhere, I noticed an old, unmarked path cutting through the underbrush. A glimmer of hope flashed through me. Maybe this would lead me back to safety. My feet scarcely made a sound as I quickly followed the narrow trail, each snap of a twig beneath my weight echoing like a gunshot in the quiet. With each step, I felt that cold grip of dread tightening again. What had happened to them? The fear of the unknown pushed me forward, urging me to escape the suffocating grasp of this haunted place. I broke through the trees, my heart racing, and found myself on a dirt road. Civilization beckoned, but could I ever escape the memory of that day? Once at the authorities, my story tumbled out, jumbled and frantic, but as I spoke, their faces went blank with skepticism. No trace of my friends was ever found. They had vanished into thin air, leaving me alone with the grim weight of a haunting experience that would never let me go. Even after returning to civilization, the aftermath haunted me. Sleepless nights turned into a grim ritual, the darkness outside my window creeping into my mind. I could barely shake off that lingering fear, as if something unseen had latched onto me, stalking me in the shadowy corners of my thoughts. While researching the area, I stumbled upon historical urban legends that tied directly to those disappearances. Tales of restless spirits and cursed waters echoed in my mind, fueling my anxiety. The whispers of those lost souls seemed to weave themselves into my nightmares, reminding me that some horrors do not just end, they linger, waiting for the right moment to ensnare the next unsuspecting victim. You know, it's strange to think back on that fishing trip and how things unfolded. As I reflect on those chilling events, it's clear there were forces at play that we couldn't comprehend. There's a deep-rooted fear of the unknown, and honestly, we should have heeded the warnings we stumbled upon. The locals whispering tales of shadows lurking in the water and strange sounds carried by the wind. Every fish we caught seemed tainted somehow, as if each one held a piece of that darkness. I remember staring into the depths of the lake, feeling an unsettling chill creep in. It was as if something was watching us from beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Those supernatural forces are real, and they do not play by our rules. This was not just a story to scare children at campfires. It felt like a chilling truth that had been buried deep in the roots of that area. I feel a sense of vulnerability, knowing how quickly an ordinary moment can spiral into a nightmare. We ignored the signs, thinking we were safe, unaware that we were trespassing in a realm that does not take kindly to intruders. From now on, I will never disregard the warnings of the unknown again. As I sit here recounting this haunting experience, it strikes me just how ordinary the day had begun. We were just friends heading out for a fishing trip, seeking solace in nature, completely unaware of the terrifying consequences that lurked, waiting for the right moment to pounce. It's a chilling reminder that the unknown doesn't always manifest in extravagant ways. Sometimes it can twist the most mundane moments into something sinister. The shadows we often ignore can hide real horrors. So here's my final thought. Trust your instincts. When something feels off, it usually is. This isn't merely a cautionary tale, it's a glimpse into how quickly our lives can spiral into darkness. Stay wary, my friends. What happened to us could very well happen to anyone. Keep a watchful eye, for the line between normalcy and terror is dangerously thin. And so when the fog rolls in and you find yourself by the water's edge, remember the tale of that fateful fishing trip and the shadows that claimed them one by one. Stay vigilant, for the unknown lurks where you least expect it. I warn, my voice low, sending a chill down your spine. Have you ever faced the unexplainable? Share your own chilling encounters in the comments below, and if you crave more true stories that defy reason and stir your deepest fears, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Welcome to a world where truth is stranger than fiction. Thank you for watching, and remember, the darkness can find you anywhere. Do you dare to explore?